everyone. I'm Jessica Kroll, editor-in-chief of Allure magazine, and I am so excited to be here for this amazing conversation around age and beauty, two things that I think go very well together. And I'm here joined today by two amazing models, Paulina Porizkova.
Me? Thank you.
Who has covered Sports Illustrated and modeled for Estee Lauder, but I think we all probably know her best for what she's doing right now on your platforms, really bringing attention to this conversation around aging and beauty and how we should just enjoy every minute of it. I'm also joined by Yasmin Warsame. And you might recognize her from recently on the Saint Laurent runway in this amazing coat. You were giving everything on the runway. But you know, she's also appeared on many magazine covers, both here in the US and internationally. And you also added acting to your resume recently, which is so great.
Thank you.
And we'll be joined by Christie Brinkley in a little bit. You all probably know her from her magazine covers and Sports Illustrated and plenty of other fashion magazines. And she modeled for CoverGirl for 25 years. So when she gets here, she'll just pop right into the conversation. We'll all pretend like it was meant to be that way. So I actually want to jump right in and talk with you, Paulina, about what you are doing on social media. You have this hashtag between J-Lo and Betty White.
Yep.
And so kind of explain to me why you started doing that hashtag and how you've built this community around you in this conversation around aging.
Okay, so first of all, I have to say it was a total mistake. I had no idea what I was doing. I was sort of new to Instagram, and I didn't really know how to use it, quite frankly. I mean, at first I felt it was like a little bit intrusive into my private life, given that, you know, you have to post a picture of yourself. And I was like, I've done so many pictures in my life, I don't really want to do any more. And then came COVID. My husband died, COVID came, and I was so freaking miserably alone. And so I sort of I started using Instagram as a way to just reach out. It was like, you know, I was stuck on this little deserted island by myself, and I was throwing little bottles with like "help me" messages out there, and there were other women like me that, you know, were maybe not in the best part of their lives, that were getting divorced or whose husbands had died, and COVID, and we were all kind of finding ourselves in the same boat, and it fostered this amazing unity, like this community that sprung out from that. So I'm blessed and so grateful, and it was completely unexpected, so it was like a gift. I'm still unwrapping this gift, and I'm going, wow, it's so cool, thank you. Between J-Lo and Betty White, that comes about from when I was sort of turning 50, and I realized I was becoming invisible to my husband and also to the world at large. And I thought, oh, like, dumb me, like somehow I did not see this coming. I always looked to the European actresses that I thought were so splendid in their 50s and their 60s, and they were so hot, and they had their hooded eyes and their wrinkles, and it looked like they had lived, but it seems like in America we weren't really into embracing that. Yeah. And so I also started talking about that just purely from a selfish point of view. Like, hey, I don't like being invisible. Anybody else feels that way? Well, it turns out none of us really like being invisible. It's kind of not cool to be invisible. When we finally assemble ourselves to like the best versions of what we are, like we've got the wisdom and we've got the patience and we've got the knowledge and all of this stuff, like we are so much more powerful and so much cooler. And we also raised our children and we can go on with our lives, and all of a sudden society goes, pasture. And so sorry, come back to the hashtag. I'm making a short story really long. I realized that older women in our society really only celebrated and accepted as long as they look younger. And so J-Lo to me is like somebody who looks fantastic. She's so freaking gorgeous, and you'd never know what her age is. And so she can be visible because she's stunning and beautiful and ageless. And then you have Betty White, who's like so cool, was so cool, and you know, adorable, and had a dirty mouth, and was like, yeah, you know, she was adorable. I guess it's where you get when you're like in your 90s, you get to be adorable. But in between them, women that look like me there's a hole. Like there's like zero representation of women that are in their 50s and 60s that actually kind of look like they're in their 50s and 60s. And that's my hole. And so that's the hashtag.
And so what kind of response have you been getting from your audience on social media around all the conversations and posts that you've done?
You know, it's kind of amazing because it goes everywhere from like, oh my God, thank you for standing up for us that, you know, are a certain age and making it look good, to freaking retire already, Grandma. Leave the space for the young ones. You have had your spotlight now. Time for you to move on. And God forbid you dare to be sexy at my age, because apparently that is one of the other things that you're not allowed to be. You know, as a menopausal woman, sexy, God, no, you're advertising false wares. So you better.
But I think there is, you know, you were a part of a story that talked a lot about how there is this kind of lack of women of a certain age in magazines, on the runway, in fashion spreads, even on TV shows, right? And I think it's something that everyone's talking about. And in a way, this industry is so much focused on being more diverse as when it comes to race.
We've gotten so much better. We've gotten so much better.
But
not
age
perfect.
is still the one, I think, that could use a lot more improvement.
You are absolutely right. And I actually think MJ Day from Sports Illustrated sort of opened up the idea to like more size inclusive, for example, which I think, you know, I look at it and I'm like, yay, this is so great, more representation for a wider spectrum of women, because actually, guys, we are all beautiful. It's just, sometimes it takes people a little longer to see our beauty when it's maybe not what society has termed beautiful. So yes, better color representation, better body representation, but age, still the old token old lady in the back. So yeah, I think we can do better on that.
Yeah. So Yasmin, you recently walked the runway. That was earlier this year. Hey, Christy.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. Hey, traffic. And I would love to hear you talk a little bit about that. I mean, you got the call to be on the runway, and you told me a little bit before this that you never planned to retire. There was no retirement for you. So tell us a little bit about that and what it was like to be on the runway.
Well, hi, everyone. I mean, knock on wood, I've been working, but there was a dry season, a drought, and that happened just right after my 30s. And in the beginning, even though I was on the older side, I started modeling when usually models retire. I started at 23. So that's unheard of. It's so old. Like, that's when models are just, you know, you're done. Because you start at 14, by 23, everyone's worked with you, you've done everything. They make you feel old. And so I was told a few times to lie about my age and not to tell the client what my age is. So instead of saying I was 23, I would say I'm 19 and I'd get the job, but I'd feel bad about it because I'm really not, you know what I mean? But it made a difference to them. They saw me differently, even though I still look the same, 23, that they assume I'm 19. They see me in 19, but if I tell them I'm 23, in their brain, I've just aged. And so I wouldn't get the job, which is crazy. But so I kind of got away with few lies, and then it just kind of dried out. It just became, you know, they just using the babies, you know. There was also we had to deal with as black models in the industry. We had to deal with they're not using any black girls this season. You know, that was something that we've also had to deal with, and just getting 1 or 2 models in a show of 100 girls. You know, 1 or 2 black girls in a show of 100 girls, which is so crazy as well. And so after all of that, then, and then I just kind of got on with my life. The phone didn't ring, and then it rang for Yves Saint Laurent. And then I was like, absolutely, it's a break. And I love going back and seeing the girls and working with, it's refreshing. And I really enjoyed it, and I was very aware of the other young ladies. And first of all, everybody looks like they came from everywhere now. It's just incredible. Their faces are just amazing. There's no one race. I think they all say 5 different, I'm like half this, half that, half this. Yeah, they're all mixed, which is great to see. But I was just watching how inexperienced they were compared to me and a couple of other girls that have had about 20, lots of experience in the industry. They were like, they didn't fill in. I remember that stage, when we were green, we didn't know, we didn't have it, but then you do more work, you get really good at it, you become professional, and when you really are good is when they bench you, and you're like, come on, I can give you the goodies now, I can work the confidence, I got it, I can kill it out there. I'll sell that piece of cloth, don't worry. But so, you don't get the opportunity, and that's sad, I think.
I think it's interesting that you said that when you would lie about your age, they would see you differently.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important for our age group to be represented, because this generation is changing the way we feel about the numbers. The numbers they ain't the same as they used to be, And if we lie about our age and pretend we're younger, then that number that we actually are will always feel like older than it is. But women today have benefited from so many things, from knowing what to eat. Our foods are, less processed now. We understand all of that. We're going organic. I'm a lifelong vegetarian, and thankfully I avoided all those growth hormones that they inject in the cattle to ripen them up and fatten them up and get them to the marketplace faster, So I feel like, my generation had Jane Fonda in our own bedroom. We didn't have to leave the house. We could pop the tape in and exercise, and that all makes a difference, So 30 today isn't what it used to be. At 30 was the number that I was told. They said, by the time you're 30, they'll chew you up and spit you out, and you'll be over the hill. So I remember kind of looking at that number like, okay, I'm coming up to 30. Now I'm coming up to 70. I'm like, I'm 68 and a half now.
Wow, you look amazing.
But I feel great, and I feel like, this generation is changing how the image of the number. We're not letting that number influence us and feel like, okay, now I'm 50, I have to act like this, or I have to dress like that, or whatever. So that's why our generation, is important to get into those issues, into the magazines, and let women see, that, and I'm told on my little Instagram page that, it's inspiring to them to see us all living full lives and doing so many things, and, just really living each day to the fullest.
Yeah.
So
I'm inspired by seeing your page and living your best life always.
well,
And I think there's this there's a term that is often used about we should age gracefully, and it's a term I kind of really don't understand.
Yeah, what does that mean?
You should die quietly and with grace. That's the way it's done. And I think really, Christie inspired me to say this. I think we should really think about it as aging healthfully, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of, being quiet and kind of slowly bowing out, which I think is, you mentioned this generation, but I would love to hear you all talk a little bit about what, maybe your mothers or your grandmothers, how the way that they went about aging maybe is different from how you age, and how you think the generation after you looks at aging. I think this perspective around aging is constantly changing.
Well, I think that, okay, look, my grandma's time, you didn't have, okay, so aging is not a choice. We all age. Yeah. We're lucky.
It's a gift.
We're lucky to age. It's a fucking privilege. Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
Amen to that.
It is.
I truly believe that. But you didn't have the same choices. 50 years ago, women couldn't choose to embrace life more healthfully, the exercise and healthy food, and even like the little tweaks that you could do for yourself to make yourself feel better about yourself. Those weren't options. You could dye your hair, My grandma had flaming red hair, like well into her, whatever, 70s. When my mom's generation came up, I mean, those were the women that sort of did make all these choices. They were out there bra burning in the 70s and being like, woo, feminist, like, you know, this is my body and like my time. And my mother, to me, is a constant inspiration for how to age well, because she's now 76. She got married at 72. She did the Peace Corps when she was 70 with her husband-to-be. She went 2 years, and she went to Uganda to teach midwifery. And so there's like no stopping this woman. And that is like, and I think the first example of an older woman to us is our mother, right? That's who we look to. Mine is freaking unstoppable, so.
And I think, you know, I also think about that, you know, your mother sounds awesome, but I also think this idea that, you know, those little things that we do have to be secrets, right? Even if you're dyeing your hair, it's like, oh, pretending like, oh yeah, you know, my hair is never gonna, you know, it's never gray. Yeah. Never was gray. I think those are things that are now coming out into the open via social media.
Well, Paulina just said that, you know, aging, like we don't have a choice. We're all gonna age, but we don't have to get old. And there's a distinction, you know. Aging is, yes, it's going to happen, but getting old is up to you. Because you have so many things in your power that you can do, from, as we talked, eating and exercise, but also your mindset and your attitude of gratitude and your curiosity, and all of that feeds you. And, you know, your age, your number that's assigned to you, basically is an energy. It's an energy, like, and you can be like dull and disinterested and not care and pessimistic and stay in the bathroom and fret about, you know, losing your beauty or having wrinkles here or there or whatever, or you can be interested in the world and get out and do things and fix it. If something bothers you, I have a wrinkle right here. That was my first wrinkle. I said, I don't like that wrinkle. It created like a little traffic circle on the side of my mouth. And I thought my smile, they always make a big thing about my smile in my job. And so I thought, well, I'm not gonna let that traffic circle happen. And I just went in and I said, what can you do about it? They said, we can put 1 drop of filler in there. And that was, you know, I said, okay, let's go. And then they said, do you want to leave out the back door? And I was like, oh, should I?
Am I supposed to?
And like the first 5 years that I did that, I was like going out the back door and thinking like I was doing something wrong. And then I was like, what is the issue here? It's my face, you know?
It's your prerogative.
If I want to if this makes me feel better, this tiny little drop that interrupts that little line that came, you know, like, I wanted it just to go on the outside of my mouth, not this little teeny line. And so that's my choice. I said no. One day I just said, no, I'm going through the lobby. I'm going out the front door.
Well, in this society, it's you know, for women, and I think we should clarify, and we're going to get to that in a minute. For women, it's very damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you decide 100%. To do a little bit of something, and I also have the filler here, just so all y'all know. You know,
hey, thank you.
You know, you're damned if you do, but then if you don't, you're like, oh, you let yourself go. You really just gave up. And so that dichotomy is a hard one to work in.
I have it both ways, because I'm like, I haven't had anything done to my face. And this is a personal decision based on childhood issues and all sorts of stuff that I'm not going to bother you with right now, but you can buy my book and find out. Self-promo. But I haven't had anything done. And so sometimes on Instagram, I will post a picture of myself without makeup, and I go, you know, nothing done, no Botox, no fillers, mostly so that people can compare themselves to me and go, okay, she hasn't had any either, so okay, so this is what she looks like. And then I'll get the, you know, you need some, girl. Like, you know, there are your peers that are older and look way better than you, so you really should get into the ball game of doing that. And I think, okay, thanks. And then I went and had some microneedling, like recently, which is just, like the thing that like, it's, yeah, I mean, I had never done it before, so I was like, oh, cool, what will this do? And I posted it on Instagram because I believe in being transparent so that like my sisters, my community can kind of be in with me on like, oh, this is what you can do to look like this, right? And the next thing I know, it's like, you've lost your card-carrying card of, of aging with dignity. You do shit to your face. I was like, okay, so I'm shamed if you do, shamed if you don't. And I think this all kind of boils down to shame. We women have been, from the moment we are born, we are shamed literally for everything. Now, just a question. There is something that men get shamed for too. It's one thing. Do you guys know what it is? And I know things will pop up in your mind, like
Small penis.
Small penis. Yes, it belongs to the category. Small penis, not enough money.
Hair falling out.
Hair.
Yeah, hair, not so much. I mean, come on, the guy who plays Captain Picard,
Yes.
bald and really hot. So then they don't need to be. No, a man gets shamed for not being a man enough. Meanwhile, we get shamed for everything else.
And you bring up a good point, which I would love to talk about a little bit, is that this idea that we're held to a double standard. Women are critiqued in a very particular way. We critique each other in a very particular way. And most times, men are left out of this conversation. Now, I do think there's starting to be, just like, with any social media platform, there are starting to be some things here and there. But I would love to hear you talk a little bit about why you think there's that double standard. Christie?
Well, I think that, I think comparison is very bad. I think that it makes people feel miserable. And I think that when you stop comparing yourself to others, that's better. Like, I really do. I feel like it's much better to just be your own person. Your question about men and, one thing that always irks me is that whenever they do a write-up on me and something, in the very first sentence, you're going to find out my age and how many men I've been married to. And they never put that in articles about men.
Yeah.
But I also think that the people that criticize women the most are women. And it comes again back to comparisons.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to, I'm sorry, I think it comes to shame. I think we internalize shame so much from early on. And then because of shame, we acquire envy. She has something I don't have.
I don't know what you mean by shame.
But feeling ashamed that you are somehow lacking, that you don't have enough.
But I think it's
you
also linked to
have more.
comparison. I think because you
well,
compare.
but shame makes you compare. Because if you don't have the shame, why need to compare, right? And I think comparison is kind of built into us biologically, that we compare, but we can compare and go, and you look fantastic, instead of, you had something done, so I'm better than you. That kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's.
And I think if you lose the shame, you sort of lose the envy, and then the comparison can be an uplifting one. Like, she has something I don't have, and I can look up to that and go, yay, good for you.
And how do I get it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what can I do? Or maybe I can just sit on the sideline and enjoy somebody else's good fortune. That would be nice.
So I want to talk a little bit,
I'm going to shut up now. Sorry.
Yasmin, about something that's particular to those with melanated skin. So there's this saying out there, black don't crack. And I often think of it as, some people hold it up as prideful, right? It's like, ooh, I'm going to be fabulous till I'm 80 because of melanin. But you still need sunscreen. And I think, but I also think it creates a sort of pressure, right? It creates a pressure to be perfect in a way. And I would love to hear you talk a little bit about that, if you feel that way.
Well, to be honest with you, I've never heard black don't crack until I came to the Western world.
Yeah, exactly.
In Africa, we don't have such a terminology at all. I'm from Somalia originally, and beauty is perceived in Africa differently, and in different cultures differently, obviously. So I've always danced between these two worlds of Western and being Somali. So whenever I would go home to see my mom, and the rest of the family, they would criticize me for being too thin, because being thin is ugly. You can't have bones showing, so voluptuous. We have poems about women's roles and, the fluff, the softness of her, all of that stuff. So they embrace.
One more reason to leave America.
Love that woman plum. I'm not the popular over there, and I'm not beautiful over there, apparently. So I would get this, I'd come to Paris and do a show, and everybody would be like, oh my God, you look amazing. What do you eat? How do you keep thin? And I'd go home, and they're like, isn't there no fucking food in Canada? What are you doing, Why do you look like that? So it was very confusing, those two worlds, but that's my world. And so beauty I've always held it differently for me. I've always thought, it was always, thinness was always bad for us. Thinness was, when guests came over to the house, my family would made me wear a couple of shirts on top of each other to hide my skinniness, my thinness. But my mother, bless her soul, she passed away. Hasn't looked in mirrors. She never liked looking in mirrors, which I found very interesting. I tried to take pictures of her, and she's like, I don't want to see it, And she's like, what's the point? This is what my face is. If you don't, what can I do about it? She said. She's living healthy. She was doing whatever she can, but other than that, what's the point? She's like, Apple ages. What am I gonna stare at it as it ages? I'm aging. I'm not gonna keep watching it. It's gonna happen. I can't do anything about it. I'm just gonna not look at it. I'm just gonna continue with my life. So it was never in the forefront. You never looked at women and say, oh my God, you're aging. You always looked at them like, as you get older, you have a different role. You get the role of, being the auntie and the advisor of the community. People come to you for advice and your wisdom. Because you're so respected because you've aged. So we held our elders to a higher standard, Children are not allowed to talk back to them. Like, if you talk back to an elder, you are screwed, That's a no-no. And so our elders and women as they age are respected more.
Yeah.
Mind you, they might not be sexy or, they might not be, in the forefront of, trying to appear and, get married and all of that stuff. They've kind of, in a way, I don't know if they slowly kind of taken the role of, I'm now a wise person and, that's I'm going to stay quiet. But they have a very valuable position in society.
Right, and I think
they're not tossed aside.
What you said, you mentioned a word I think is very important, value. I think in this place that we're in now, a lot of times the value is linked to outer appearance. Right? But what you're speaking about is how what we should really be valuing is wisdom.
Yes.
Is, the longer you live, the more you learn. I was just on the phone with my little sister, like, don't do that. I'll tell you the story about when I did that. I promise you it's not going to end well. So I think, the older you get, the wiser you get. And I think we have to change the way we perceive value. It can't just be this that is value because this fades. And so what? But what we learn, what we have in our minds, what we have in our hearts, our stamina, our wisdom. I mean, Christie, you've got 3 businesses. That does not fade,
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think what you're talking about when you say black don't crack, it's these expectations that you have to feel like you have to live up to.
Yeah.
And certainly being a model, there's expectations that you're going to look a certain way. And I remember after I did Sports Illustrated, I was like a little bit worried about going to a beach because I thought, they make such a big deal, it's embarrassing. And I thought, gosh, I don't look like that in a swimsuit when I go to the beach. It's, it's like in the best light of the day. It's lit. It's, you're standing there with a photographer angling you, and you're angling your body, to try And when you go to the beach, you're there, you're just going to have fun and run around and play with your kids and, whatever.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where they made me feel like, from all the comments, I felt so self-conscious about being in a bathing suit in a public place on a beach that I would say, there's too many people on the beach. We have to find a more deserted beach. We have to go someplace, And now, in the Hamptons, for the first time, I saw like paparazzis, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that's like the worst thing that you can imagine, is to get paparazzi'd with a long lens, because that's also going to like enlarge whatever they're doing, because it pulls your image out. And I thought, so but when I turned 50, I thought, 50 is such a goal number where you reassess and you take stock and you like think of what's important and what's not, et cetera. And I thought, I am going to go to the beach. And I am not going, if somebody goes, ew, look at that, it's like, what, I'm 50 and I earned my right to have whatever you're going to complain about on my body. And that's that, so I think that, whenever there's a pressure put, like an expectation on you that you feel like you have to live up to, that, can be an issue. You have to like be able to put that in perspective and be like, no, you know what? I think, I am what I am. And it's like, I've got good intentions. I, hope that whoever I bump into in the world is left with a little smile, and I, don't mean to harm anybody ever. So I am what I am. you know?
And I think, we talked a little bit about how you, there's these expectations, but it's expectations to look like what you look like in a magazine. And as you said, there's a lot of things that go into putting a magazine shoot together, from the lighting and the special lenses, and not to mention the retouching afterwards. And I would love to hear everyone on the panel, kind of as a last question before we go to question and answer. What can media, what can the beauty industry do to make women of a certain age feel more accepted, feel more beautiful, feel welcome in that space? And one thing that we've done at Allure is, in 2017, we banned the term anti-aging. Because what is that? How are you going to be anti-living? So, we don't use that term in our magazine because it's just unrealistic. And you see it on a lot of products out there. And I think even readers come to us and be like, how can I get rid of everything on my face? And at Allure, we have that information. If that's what you want for yourself, you can find it. But I think, what can we do in the beauty industry and in media in general to kind of be more accepting of women over 50 and beyond?
Oh, fine, I'll take it. I'll take it first. Well, my take on this is, look, we've been, we live in a society that's a patriarchal society, and so women have been objectified for thousands and thousands of years. And when we appear in magazines, yes, it's a part of this objectification. So therefore, looks are so important, right? Because that's your little pretty privilege. It's like if you're pretty, then you get the pretty privilege that comes with it. So of course we want to be pretty, because it makes you a little bit more important. Like, I mean, who doesn't? Anybody who's ever bought a lipstick or a cream wants to be a little prettier. I mean, that's what we do. And I think we are now, as we age, is when the objectification of women is the most apparent, because we are a part of nature, right? It's like spring, summer, fall, winter, and each season has a unique beauty to it, and we may have our favorites, but we can all acknowledge that each season is beautiful in its own way. Art, when we buy art, we are trying to preserve beauty in one moment. And if, if Van Gogh's sunflowers, tomorrow you wake up and they've wilted, you're like, well, I don't want that anymore, I want my money back. And that's where you see the objectification of women in how we are expected to remain the same. as a work of art rather than what we are, nature, that should be celebrating for transitioning from season to season and having that specific beauty go along with it. And we need representation of that. We need representation of spring, summer, fall, and winter. There, sorry, done.
Thank you, thank you. Yasmin or Christie, do you have anything to add?
Sam, do you want to take it? I'll take it after you.
Oh, well, I think that from basic simple things like more women our age on the pages, because women will say to me on Instagram, I'm so glad that I could see your feet because I was wondering if I could wear Keds too, you know, if it looks too young or if it's okay. And so I think just for starters, because women do want to sort of feel, I don't like the word appropriate, but they want to feel like it's going to look good on them, and or how to dress,
Mirrored.
whatever. Yeah. So and I also think that if magazines would also talk maybe more about accomplishments of the women in the magazines, instead of this beauty, this this woman who's, this doctor who's, this school teacher who's, school teachers today need to be praised for what they're going through. And, so more real people and all ages. And I think that could go a long way. Magazines are you're supposed to open them up and learn something, good take-home items, like, of course we all want to know ways to do our makeup that's going to help, with make things look good, better. And, or ways to do your hair, or, tricks to do, to whatever, all of that stuff. That's fun. It's great. Beauty is fun. It should be fun. You should be able to fashion is fun. And so everybody wants to take part in that. And so I think that more representation, more.
And I think what you said about eliminating the rules. There are no rules. Wear the Keds if you want to wear the Keds. Wear the bodice, the corset, everything. Be out here. I think we're eliminating the rules.
Age differently anyway. There is no okay, I'm 68 and a half, and then because she is, I'm gonna, everybody, like, maybe somebody's got like a really great décolletage and they want to dress to sort of accent that, or maybe somebody's got some, really, slamming legs and they're gonna like, maybe somebody has, everybody's different. Everybody's an individual, and you have a lifestyle, and so.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yasmin?
I like that. I'm very lucky to be sitting where I'm sitting right now, because I've got these beautiful women who are paving the way along with all of us, and I really think speaking about this and talking about this and doing all this stuff is so important, especially for the young girls and young people that are coming over. But I think as a society, we have to change how we feel. And I think the change, if it comes from the society, the magazines and the media has no choice but to demand the thirst of the majority. And if every woman says, hey, I'm not gonna let anyone else define my fucking beauty. This is my life. I have done every fucking thing for everyone else.
Yes.
It's my goddamn time. Nobody tell me anything about what's going on with me. Let me tell you what's going on with me. And I think right there, we gotta take our power back.
And it is changing. Like, I had a 20-year contract with CoverGirl, and then they decided they needed somebody younger that I didn't, represent anymore. And 10 years later, they came back to me and said, we want you back again, because now innovation, they had a new makeup that had little reflections that, go inside the wrinkle and reflect out and make it look less obvious. I mean, they're constantly coming, lots of innovations and exciting things. And so I said, that's great. You see, you're thinking about women our age. specific problems. That's what my skincare company does. We look at specific problems and we try to address those. So if that's your issue, then try it. If it's not, move on.
Yeah.
But they are coming around now, and you're seeing, instead of a 17-year-old in a picture for skincare for older women, they're actually using women in the appropriate age.
Yeah, that's awesome.
happening.
So representation, I think, is what we've all taken away from this conversation. And I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to each of you. We had some great laughs together, didn't we? And I hope you all enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you each for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Sorry, we don't have time for questions, but I'm sure we'll all be... Wait, we have 5 minutes for questions? Oh, yay! So we get some type of questions.
Like, I could talk about
right
it
here,
all day.
the black coats. Yes. Hi.
Hi, I'm Samara. I want to thank you so much for being here and being role models to women and to girls. It's so important to see you being true to yourselves, so thank you. I wanted you to speak a little bit about beauty filters on Instagram. To a degree, magazines are photoshopped and filtered and airbrushed, but these filters are completely changing your face and, obliterating age and skin texture. And it's so psychologically damaging, I can't even process it. And it's also addictive. I'm guilty as charged for using them. So I'm curious what your experience is with them and what your thoughts are and how they're affecting young women as they think about aging.
Yeah, I think it's super, super, super destructive. Look, you can only start from your home, right? I never filter anything on my page ever. Make a point of not filtering and not retouching and just putting it in there. And I try to follow women that inspire me that also don't filter. So it's that's a little bit up to you, who you want to follow. If you are following somebody who does use a lot of that stuff and it makes you feel bad about yourself, then just don't. Find somebody better to follow. How to explain that to our young ones who don't necessarily have the discrimination and don't really understand that, I think is really tricky, because I have goddaughters and granddaughters that look to these influencers and they're like, oh, she's so beautiful and I'm like, it's all filtered. But I would love to know how you guys deal with it, because I don't know how to deal with it.
I think there's a term now that's going around in the health industry about there's a psychological problem with these filters for these kids, because they're some sort of a deformed, they can't, when they look in the mirror, as they are, they're disgusted with themselves, because they just got so used to, so they kind of they don't, it's literally, it's a psychological, something is gonna happen to these kids. This is not, it's a huge deal, and I don't understand why the health people are not getting involved in this. This is a crisis for these young children, and unfortunately, suicide is not reported, but they are all taking themselves out. And that is so wrong. That's due to that filter, that's due to the social media, that's due to having millions of people who are supposedly your friends, who can drop you like this any minute. That's just, I don't even know how to, I feel so, I fear for the young people now. I really fear for their future. I can't imagine what will happen to them when they're in their 40s and 50s and 60s. Yeah. How will they transition into that? What will happen? I don't know.
Yeah, there is so much depression going around from the pressure of going through Instagram and seeing all these perfected images, and then the kids feel that they don't stack up. And,
nobody can stack up.
It is really a big issue. I don't know, maybe they could have a thing that says, this photo's been filtered.
Yeah, that would be a good start.
Yeah. Another question? Oh, here.
Hi, I'm Belle Donovan, and I was just wondering if you guys could talk a little bit more about your personal experiences kind of growing up in the modeling industry and spending a large portion of your life in the modeling industry, and how that kind of affected your views as you were aging.
Yeah, this will have to be the last question, I think.
Oh, crap.
That's a good one.
I keep talking, so you guys go.
Go for it.
Well, my experience in the industry is, I feel that the industry has changed so much since the day that I was in it. When I started, the magazines, literally, they would tell us you have to cross your legs like this. You have to, they knew exactly for a magazine cover, like if they needed a blue-eyed girl, a brown-eyed girl, if the hair was parted on the side or on this side, like they had it all down to some kind of science. And then the industry expanded and evolved, and I don't know, I feel very lucky that there's been such an expansion and so much innovation also that's allowed me to continue to stay on in this industry. And, you know, with, yes, I'll go, I was a spokesperson for All Therapy. I think I was one of the first people I know to, in the industry, to say, yeah, I'm doing this wand that emits these kind of frequencies into your skin that, you know, helps puff up the skin a little bit and all of that. But, and it was interesting because starting that, the company themselves had a whole campaign drawn out about sneaking in and doing this and sharing a beauty secret. And I said, enough with the beauty secret stuff. Let's talk about this as an option. And so, you know, I feel like the industry has evolved and changed to a lot, you know. There's still things, as we're saying now, that it could evolve some more. But I think it's expanded, and I don't know, I feel with age also comes a certain relaxed attitude about beauty. Like, I don't want to have my face be like, they could erase everything. I could get Botox in my forehead. I don't. I don't want to erase my laugh lines on my eyes. You know, but I don't like this line. I'll take care of it. And so, and I think I would do that if I wasn't in the industry as well. I think that, you know, that sometimes I'll say, oh, because I have work or whatever, but like, I probably should have gone in to get, you know, my hair and seen a dermatologist or whatever, but I haven't been there in, like, before coming here, but I was like, I don't have time. I live out in the country in the Hamptons, and to drive into the city, it's an ordeal. So maybe like 10 years ago, I'd be more particular about it, but now I figure I'm 68 and a half, and, and I earned those wrinkles, and so if they weren't there, it would be odd.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for staying and listening.